Hello and welcome to the Swinging Christies, the Christie Time podcast about Agatha Christie in the swinging 60s. I'm Mark Aldridge. I've written a lot about Agatha Christie, including my books about Poirot and Miss Marple.
Yes, and I'm Go Robert Brown. I'm a writer, and I'm afraid I have nothing to say here because what I was going to say is a work in progress.
Oh, very good.
We're off to a flying start.
Oh my God.
Because the title of this week's episode, dear listener, is Work in Progress. Go on, what eye-rolly thing were you going to say?
I was just going to say that we are in the place where lots of things arrive in their work in progress for a little while.
Yes,
because we're recording on location today, which is why you may hear some stuff in the background, such as our commitment to never recording online, unless the participant is on the other side of the world.
A diva, but TBC who I'm talking about there.
But
you'll find out soon. So we're at the National Theatre.
Yes.
Which is relevant because we're actually sat amongst the Limbury Prize for Stage Design, which is a beautiful free exhibition of set design and costumes and various other things. And actually, if you go out the back of here towards... What?
By the bins.
Out by the bins where you belong, towards Waterloo Station.
I have gone to Waterloo Station.
Famously.
Yeah.
But you can see there's a window into the set design department, and you can actually see them constructing that. Yeah, go that way today and have a look. As in, it's a deliberate window for people to... It's not like
it's not like Margaret Rutherford in the Miss Marples going up on the boxes and sneaking into
just me on a stepladder. There's a greasy mark on the window.
They're like, I thought we'd banned him.
Oh, that boy's
all
back.
Those scripts in again.
No, we're going to talk about, so not in terms of the theatre, but we are going to talk about works in progress, as in working titles.
Yes, which is one of those things, again, we do squirrel these things away and be like, oh, we'll talk about that one day. But it came out of a few things as well, because there were a few things that I'd spotted in the archive, some of which might be new. I mean, they'll be new to some listeners anyway.
Definitely.
But just to be able to share that sort of process, why might you dispense with one working title? Because sometimes they're variations on a theme, but sometimes they're really different.
Yeah,
and
true.
so you can really think about the direction. And sometimes I think they are literally working titles, as in to remind herself which story this is and say, this is that book. But sometimes they are genuinely
considered. Sometimes they're very, very preliminary, and then are jotted in the notebook in a moment of haste, and then other times they actually made finished typescripts, which is quite incredible. But it's like you say, it's an insight into Christie's process, which we always love kind of peeking into whenever we can. I imagine most of our listeners have read friend of the podcast John Curran's Secret Notebooks.
Yes.
Some of them,
so
almost all of them are
this.
in there. Yes, very helpful for anything to do with her process. Some of them aren't, though, and there are some that I wasn't overly familiar with, or we've kind of gathered them from quite a few different sources. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously, we're going to go through the swinging texts.
Yes.
So that's 59 to 71 as normal. But Mark, you know how sometimes I like to bring a little. It's almost like a show and tell session, isn't it? At the top of the episode, I like to bring a little game sometimes, like when we did the Christmas one, which you ended up. Dare I remind you? You ended up pink with hysteria that day. I think you'd had far too many eggnogs, and you had a great time.
I did. I really enjoyed that.
And I'm sure you're going to have as good a time with this. So, dear listener, we're homosexuals, and we like Drag Race. We both like Drag Race.
We do,
and drag generally. And it got me thinking, what Christie titles and references would make good drag queen names?
Oh, I love this.
So I've got some ideas, and I'm going to lay down the gauntlet, and I suggest you think about it you may have some on the tip of your tongue, Mark, but if not, then I suggest you have a think about it between now and next episode, and you can bring your hilarity to next episode.
I will.
But in the meantime, might I entertain you with, for example, Yellow Iris?
Very good.
Perfect. Sad Celeste?
That's just a name. Like
Celeste?
Yeah, okay.
Come on.
All right.
I know a Celeste.
I know it's a name.
She's not very sad. Oh, no, yes. I wasn't saying you're denying the veracity of the name. maybe a bit of a trashier queen.
Okay.
Cheap Pat, as in The Adventure of the.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm really
quite,
enjoying thinking
quite a
about
pretty
this.
girl, I think. Rose Yewtree.
All right.
But also a lovely call forward to WESTMAPOD, launching very soon, 31st of March.
Yeah.
Be there.
Had Magnolia's blossom.
Oh, that's cheeky. Don't look me directly in the eye and say that. That is good though, and that's off the cuff. I've had weeks to prepare these. Inspired by UK season 7 of Drag Race, I thought Catherine Pigeons.
That is good.
A Welsh queen, perhaps.
Yeah, I love.
Okay, I'm not done.
Okay.
What about Just Jane from Jane in Search of a Job? I mean, the obvious one is Tuppence.
Just Tuppence.
Just Tuppence.
Yeah.
You can't beat it.
Or Mary Poppins tie-in. Tuppence is a bag.
Oh, for God's sakes! That's a Mary Poppins reference, not a Christie reference.
But both because Tuppence is a person, and she's a bit of a bag.
Okay,
Like
we'll give you a
bag.
couple of weeks to think about
okay.
yours. Drag King wise, I thought Hickory Dickory Jock.
That's good though. Hickory Dickory Jocks. That's a genuinely good one.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I'm pausing for applause, listener. Thank you. Maybe a Scandinavian drag king or a German drag king. Traitor Hands.
Oh, I like that.
Traitor Hands.
Traitor Hands.
Traitor Hands.
That's really good.
And then finally, I think this is either explicit tag or not.
What I love about that though is that Traitor Hands means nothing to anyone other than hardcore Agatha Christie fans.
Oh yes, we
It
should
has
have
no
explained
meaning
that.
beyond that. Like it's not a phrase. So literally, you're talking about 200 people in the world would understand what that means.
But all of them are listening, so
But
that's
they're all
fine. So for clarity, if you don't know, Traitor Hands is the original short story title of The Witness for the Prosecution.
Yes,
yeah.
in a magazine only. Like
100 years ago.
literally 101 years ago.
What are we like? We are geeks, dear listener. And finally, I do have one more.
Oh, go on.
But I think I'll cut it out of the episode because I think even though we have an explicit tag, it is too much. Have a think.
Yeah, I'm
and
gonna-
start of next episode, hit
So
me
I'm
with
gonna spend
yours.
all of this episode thinking about it.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. This wasn't gonna bode well for your concentration, is it?
No. Okay, right.
But yeah, let's crack on.
I've already given you one good one.
You gave us several good ones
Yeah.
off the cuff as well, so very impressed. Do you mind cutting it there?
Greenshaw's Molly.
No. That is good.
So in terms of Agatha's process for titles, we mentioned that sometimes they'd be in the notebooks. As John Curran has pointed out, quite often she would put like A, B and C and stuff, just to remind her about key characters and
Yes,
things.
and that's an Abe memoir rather than an honest-to-goodness working title.
Yeah.
So we will make those caveats as we go through. What we're not saying is this is a definitive list of all ways in which the book was known officially, to Collins, for example.
But she was dictating almost all of this, so she would dictate the title at the beginning and it would be typed up just as is. And very often, when that typescript arrived back, that is often when she would make a change. So it might be adding a the or something, or it might be crossing it out and completely changing it. And then as she was making her changes to the typescript, she would often have suggested other titles, including other titles for chapters and sections of the books. So it was really an ongoing process, and of course it would go to her agent, Edmund Cork, and then through to her editors at Collins. And there would be a bit of discussion, but we'll talk about individual cases as they go through, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other thing I would just want to say up top, Christie has quite an interesting history of books being known by different titles in America, actually published by different titles in America, doesn't she? And what is interesting for our particular lens in the swinging period is that is not the case in all but one instance, which we'll come to.
Yes.
But the decision was made
Beginning of the 90s?
Yeah, so post Christie's death to unify the title. So now if you buy The Murder on the Orient Express in America, it's called The Murder on the Orient Express and not Mystery of the Calais Coach or whatever it was.
Yeah. Very occasionally, I think there are some special editions that have used old titles. And I note that the ITV Marple used What Mrs. McGillicuddy Saw as their title for 450 from Paddington, which is funny. But
What, when it aired in America? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Especially because...
That was a long time after it changed.
Yeah, but also it was never filmed as it's not like Murder, She Said was released as what Mrs. McGillicuddy saw in there.
No.
Well, of course, because there's no Mrs. McGillicuddy in Murder, She Said. But
maybe the title doesn't mean so much.
That's not the best thing to say at the top of an episode.
Well, what I meant... No.
What I meant... Show how much they mean.
No. What I meant
Aldridge.
Was that 450 from Paddington might seem like a weirdly cryptic thing if you don't know that Paddington's a train station.
Yes, yeah. Which is the reason why they did change quite a few titles, isn't it? Is things like that nursery rhyme doesn't really exist in the same way in the US, or that saying or something. And we also talked about this sort of thing in our Titles in Translation episode with Mystery Steve, which is also on your feed. I think the other thing I want to say, and we sort of got into it in that episode, and we'll do it again here, which is that, you could say, it's just a title or whatever, but much like with covers, okay, maybe we shouldn't judge the book by them, but it is the first thing that the reader experiences. And actually, as in the case of some of these, it can dramatically change the lens through which you view the book.
The emphasis is really important, which is why I think sometimes you can read a book, and this isn't just an Agatha Christie thing, and the meaning of the title doesn't emerge until really late on. And I often have forgotten what the title is by that point, and I'm like, oh, I see why they say that, or whatever.
Yeah, okay, so shall we get into it?
Let's start with Cat Among the Pigeons.
Cat Among the Pigeons is a Poirot novel about the murder of a games mistress at a girls' school from 1959.
Which, as we've already discussed, was an alternative title for Ordeal by Innocence. We're not going to keep careering back through... You can imagine if we just keep flipping back through books and be like, and that could have been a title for that, and that we'll end up Mysterious Affair at Styles.
Well, I mean, it's true that, Cat Among the Pigeons is such a gloriously non-specific saying.
Yeah.
And that basically...
It's like Murder in Retrospect, which you swapped around between Five Little Pigs and Sleeping Murder.
That's very true. I mean, I do think fundamentally a story is about something surprising or shocking or confrontational or confusing happening in an otherwise established order. So by that metric, you could call Hamlet Cat Among the Pigeons. You could call anything Cat Among the Pigeons. But it is a great title.
It is a great title, and it's interesting that it is completely different to another possible title, which was Death of a Games Mistress, which is very literal and very specific.
Now, somebody else came to this title afterwards? Is it P.D. James?
Oh, did they?
I'm sure there is a book called Death at the Games.
I was just thinking that it feels like an Ariadne Oliver book.
Yes,
I don't know if someone else has said that before. I might have stolen that idea.
Maybe I made this up. It just feels P.D. Jamesy to me, or that kind of.
It does. It really does feel like. I was thinking like there's a Josephine Tay that's quite similar to it.
Yeah. You said a minute ago about the title could change the emphasis within the story, and Cat Among the Pigeons famously, I won't spoil too much, but it has multiple murders, and not all of them are linked in the way that you might think.
No.
Or so.
Not in the traditional Agatha Christie way.
Yes. So actually, that title would have put much more emphasis on one of those murders, perhaps as a means to obfuscate, to move your attention onto that. It's also the murder that happens earliest in the book, so it's the one that's the least of a spoiler. I'd say most blurbs and titles have a kind of, and covers have a kind of unwritten rule where the stuff they cover is in the sort of first quarter, because that feels not so spoilery because you're not too far into the book. Having said that, it is only one of 3 deaths.
Yeah, it might catch my eye on the shelf if I saw Death of a Games Mistress, but I would be surprised to see the name Agatha Christie next to it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel... It feels just too literal.
It feels more parodic.
Yeah.
Like more like the sort of thing a cozy crime would be called now in the style of building the style of Christie.
Yeah.
Although she did do she did Death in the Clouds.
Dies and stuff.
Which is the same.
But then I don't like Lord Edward Dies as a title either.
See, I do. I like how declarative it is. It's unusual, but I like how it feels almost confrontational. And I like the present tense with the urgency as well.
Yes, the present tense is nice.
Yes.
I'll let you have that.
We're looking at ourselves. We're looking at each other knowingly whilst talking about present tense, which we can't say any more about now. But anyway.
So next up, The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding.
The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding and a Selection of Entrees is a collection of early short stories, including the titular The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding, or The Theft of the Royal Ruby, and The Mystery of the Spanish Chest, both of which were rewritten for publication in 1960.
So we've mentioned this before, but it's worth saying because some of these, of course, they have different titles in magazine publications prior to this era, really.
Yeah.
It means that The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding, we discussed, has had other printings as Christmas Adventure.
Yes.
Although the original magazine was The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding.
Yeah, it's become sort of almost fan lore or tradition to call it Christmas Adventure originally.
Just to make things easier.
Just to clarify. And then there's also, of course, The Mystery of the Baghdad Chest, which we've discussed at length, was The Mystery of the Spanish Chest.
Indeed.
And the swapping of the nationality of the chest. I went to see The Mousetrap the other day.
You did?
And
I didn't get the invite to go, by the way.
well, I was
He
actually
took a friend.
I was actually there on
I wasn't invited.
Penguin business rather than podcast business for a change.
Yeah. Don't worry about me.
Isn't it
I was
important
just
that
sat at home.
Isn't it important that I introduce more people to Agatha Christie? My friend Tierney had never been. Isn't it important she gets to share the love of Christie as well? She had a great time. Good. Blinking back tears. Do you know, I don't know if I said this to you, but it was actually really sweet. We were sat in front of this family from Essex, and there were like 2 boys and a girl, and the boys were they were all sort of tween age, and like in the interval when they were like speculating as to who they thought did it, and the fact they weren't completely wrong, but they weren't quite right either, which I was quite pleased. It would have been quite devastating if the lights had come up and they'd just gone, oh, so-and-so obviously did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that they were like throwing around theories and stuff and going, oh, it's good, isn't it? Yeah, it's good. Like, it was really, it was really heartwarming to see. But the reason I bring it up is there's a chest on that set, isn't there, by the door? Yeah. But I was sort of peeking at it like, does that look Spanish or Iraqi to me? But I must look again at the script and see if it's mentioned in there, because as all traditional stage plays, Christie very much wrote her scene description with a lot of detail as to what's upstage, what's downstage, the furniture
there's a
on
copy
set.
Downstairs. I was just looking in the shop.
Oh well, we'll look after
Thank
this.
you,
There you
National
go.
Theatre Shop.
There you go. Okay, moving on. The Pale Horse.
The Pale Horse is a standalone novel that explores mysterious goings-on and unexplained deaths at a countryside inn from 1961.
Great title. Love
Fantastic
The Pale Horse
title.
because
Biblical
it's
reference.
so evocative. Yeah, biblical reference, but also, dare I say, because it's the sort of thing that is the name of a pub, as it pretty much is here in an inn, that it also speaks of rural England. You know, it's very English.
Yeah. But yeah, and anyone that knows their Bible knows it's Book of Revelation. But it was referred to in the notebooks as the Thallium Mystery, which
no way that's going to make it to publication.
No. This is an example of a probably more of an Abe memoir.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I must go back to writing that book that I want to write about thallium for Christie's personal notes.
Because she knows how well it can be done.
But yes, as you rightly say, that does. Well, does it give it? Yeah, I guess it does, because a big spine of the story is the specific symptoms of thallium,
absolutely,
and how mysterious they are.
Exactly, yeah.
And that could seem supernatural. You're going to say, yeah. That would rather ruin that.
I was reading the other day the academic journal article that cited The Pale Horse because a nurse had been reading it and But it was really interesting just to read the actual original article, which is basically says, we're writing this just in case The Pale Horse ever goes out of print, because Agatha Christie's done a good job, such a good job of describing it, that we thought that it's such a rare poisoning.
Oh,
that
ye of little faith, like she was ever going to go out of print.
I know.
Don't be ridiculous.
What a world.
But yeah, I mean, that's a sobering reminder, I guess, of so many of her contemporaries have. And it's very unusual to be 50 years post-death and still every scrap of your published work still readily available pretty much the world over.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
Well, it's heard of because Agatha's done it, but unheard of for anyone else.
Yeah. Okay, next one.
Next, we've got The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side.
The Mirror Cracks from Side to Side is a Miss Marple novel about a poisoning at a film star's house. It's from 1962.
Which I guess is worth saying, firstly, that in America it's The Mirror Cracked.
Yeah, so this is our one and only example of a slight deviation.
Yes.
And actually people do call it The Mirror Cracked here a fair amount just for ease, because it's quite a mouthful.
And the film is called The Mirror Cracked.
The film's called The Mirror Cracked. The play, Rachel Wagstaff's play we saw recently. Is
I like
known by
either,
that title.
or both. I think they both work. And actually, so the way this worked was that both were on the table and both had been approved by everybody.
Okay.
And effectively, the British publisher picked A Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, and the American one went with the mirror cracked. And this was the point at which a reminder letter was sent around that said we did actually agree fairly recently that we weren't going to have difference between American and British.
I see.
So that was allowed, but Agatha had actually approved another title for America first, which is The Look of Doom. So The Look of Doom, she'd said, is fine because that had been used for serialisation in a magazine in America.
So, and that being the stare of Marina Gregg in the party, which is sort of remembered by various witnesses as the key to unlocking the case.
Yes.
And then there is a bit of trickery around why exactly the stare is relevant, but it is fair to say it is relevant. And of course, it's likened to the look of the Lady of Shalott when she finally breaks the curse and looks out the window, which she's not allowed to do. She's only allowed to look out at the mirror and see the reflection of the window.
I'm learning lots today. I didn't know that story.
Yeah, I did it at primary school, the Lady of Shalott. I love it. Yeah. So I've always loved.
They knew you were going to become an Agatha Christie
What
fan.
can I say?
Nurturing you.
I don't think the Look of Doom is a quote from elsewhere in the poem.
Well, no, there's this whole thing at the time about the Tennyson poem being misquoted in the book, and there's a bit of a back and forth because Agatha's saying, no, Dolly has misquoted it, that's fine. I haven't misquoted it.
Yes.
It's the character. So she obviously wants to get the sense of it. The literal words weren't quite so important as the feeling that the poem that it
conjures. And absolutely. It's interesting though that because we have had instances where the same source has been used to source an alternative American title, but not the same quote. So the example I'm thinking of is Taken at the Flood, with There is a Tide for the US, which is the start of the quote, There is a Tide in the Hearts of Men, and it's Julius Caesar, which ends in There is a Tide, which is the UK title. So, I mean, with that, you could imagine a world in which, I don't know, the title was Out Flew the Web and Floated Wide or something. But yeah, it's a very evocative and beautiful poem. Or The Curse Has Come Upon Me.
That's just what I was trying to... Just the curse, I could see that work.
Yeah. I guess from the point of view of sheer space on covers, like from a practical publishing point of view, the Mirror Crack does also make sense for that reason as well. The Mirror Crack from Side to Side must be her longest title in terms of letters.
Probably is, and I remember her asking for it to be on the cover diagonally, and I think they were like, no, it doesn't fit.
Yeah. Well, and it's telling that the first edition UK cover, which I'm very well acquainted with because was published on the same day as my mum was born. But that famously doesn't have any illustrative elements at all because it can't, because there's not really space for it. Once you put Agatha Christie in big letters and that whole title and a little Collins logo or Collins Crime Club.
So we'd mentioned before, of course, about development murder or the development murder. We'd spoken about it before, but I think we're of the same mind, which is that, again, was unlikely to make it to the cover of the book.
Yes.
Although it's a reminder. But one of our listeners did say about a double meaning.
Yeah, so we spoke about it back in Money, I think, didn't we? The Money episode, because I was making the point that it's quite pulpy. Although, I agree, I don't think it was ever actually seriously considered. But I quite like the idea of almost like development murder. Like a it feels
murder.
Yeah, well, it feels quite pulpy and quite thrillery, which is, as we know, like one of the ways in which Christie paperbacks were sold in this kind of period and afterwards as well, trying to bring her into line with writers like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler.
Because there is a bit of me that thinks if I were a publisher, I would be trying to encourage her to pick titles that have got murder or death or killing or something in the title, because they're so much splashier on the
That is true, although I would say, I wonder if that is much more a concern, and today's publishing world, what with SEO, search engine optimization, where you want as many of the keywords in your title as possible. So it's very unlikely that an unknown debut is going to be published without a word like death or murder, or because that's what games algorithms. Obviously, it was less database. Hello, Michelle Kuzma, if you're listening. The information system was bookshelves and magazines and directories rather than the World Wide Web. So maybe that was slightly less important then. But yeah, you're right. It's still splashy on a shelf. But yes, we talked about development in terms of referring to the development, right? The housing estate next to St Mary Mead, which is a big part of and kind of a red herring in the Mirror Cracked. But also a listener pointed out, and I think there's something in this, that it could be more referring to the development of a baby and developmental difficulties, as we would probably call them now. It's probably anachronistic to describe it in this way, but certainly from today's perspective, it looks like that title could have worked on that level as well. But like we say, unlikely to have ever seen the shelves.
So we're going on stage now.
Yeah. How relevant for where we are currently. The rule of three.
So, well, the Rats is always the Rats. So if you don't think there's another one for that,
and that's a great title.
Yeah.
And I like to say it's the dirty 60s equivalent of the Mousetrap.
Yeah.
You know, the cute, the cozy 50s mice have become dirty, urban, nasty rats in the 60s.
Very nice. Yes. Afternoon at the Seaside, though, you spotted a couple.
Afternoon at the Seaside is a one-act play, part of the Rule of Three collected plays, about the theft of an emerald necklace beside the seaside in 1962.
Yeah, so both Seaside Holiday and At the Seaside were variously included in plans. Again, well, I could see At the Seaside finding its way to the stage, although it's worth saying maybe those individual titles are less important because they have that umbrella title, which would have been on the playbills.
They are in
stuff.
The programme and stuff.
Yeah,
you do know.
But as in, you probably wouldn't. I don't know how many people going to it would have been aware of the titles of each of the three, as opposed to the overarching title that was advertised as
that's fair.
The Rule of Three. But yeah, At the Seaside is interesting because it's almost, if you squint, almost one of her nursery rhyme titles, because I do like to be beside the seaside. It's kind of that, and that does play at the beginning of. It's referred to in the first stage direction in that play.
I think that Afternoon at the Seaside works best because it so specifically locates it in time, and so you know that everything's going to unravel on this location at this time, which for a one-act play I think is a really helpful sort of grounding for the audience to be like, everything's happening today, keep your eye on the stage, we're not going to suddenly go to a hotel or something.
Yes, it promises a unity. Yeah, that's true, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I wonder, because in some versions, the plays have appeared in various orders, haven't they, in various iterations, including now, like up to the version that's in print now. But in some iterations, it's second. I mean, Afternoon does also then imply, I like the idea of Afternoon at the Seaside coming first, tonally, but also it kind of implies it's like a lead-in, and then you get into the sort of darker evening, which is the other two plays are significantly darker, and it does kind of work. Although if you order them like Rats, Afternoon, Patient, then does that give you morning, afternoon, evening? Rats is a pretty rough way to start the day.
Yeah, you've got it. I think it's got to go Afternoon at the Seaside, The Rats and The Patient. It just doesn't work in any other. I guess with the current The Patient, where it's got the proper ending, rather than the initial one where it was like, work it out for yourself, then actually you could put that as a middle and finish on The Rats. So that's hell of a downbeat ending too.
Yeah, I see Patient makes sense as an ending to me, not just because the curtain call is so specific, the curtain down moment is so significant, but because that's the most Christie-ish in terms of like an honest-to-goodness mystery, whereas the other two feel like slight departures in different ways. So it almost feels like it brings that to a close and satisfies you before you go off. But I mean, I guess the argument for going Afternoon being in the middle is that it's a bit of a palate cleanser maybe between the hideousness of the Rats and then the violence of the Patient maybe.
And then there's The Patient.
The Patient is a one-act play, part of the Rule of Three, about a hospitalised woman who may be able to expose the truth about her accident, from 1962.
Which has guilty hands. So we're going back to our witness for the prosecution.
So this is what I was going to say. Yeah, it does sound a lot like Traitor Hands, doesn't it? And I kind of love that because they don't feel dissimilar in terms of tone, actually.
But also Guilty Hands, like, shoved someone out the window.
Yeah.
Literally guilty hands. Yeah. Not like figuratively.
No.
But literally
I guess the Traitor
Hands
are more figurative, whereas the guilty hands feel very frighteningly confrontationally.
We are on a balcony.
It's quite high as well.
Yeah.
No, it's I really
I don't
like
want to
that
die
title,
ironically, Gray. Don't push me off.
I think that would be the perfect way for you to die.
Well, ironically.
Yeah. You're quite a wry sort of person. I think that would be very accurate.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great title. I do like The Patient, and it mirrors with The Rats, but I do like the idea of almost it's not a sequel in any meaningful sense content-wise, and obviously, like we said, Traitor Hands isn't a particularly known title, and it gets known as Witness for the Prosecution, but in the notebooks, John talks about how Christie made notes for Mousetrap 2.
Yes.
Not that it was in any way a sequel
not like
to
a reunion dinner or anything.
No. Yeah. Wasn't that funny when we all, had a traumatic stay in snowbound countryside? But more because she wanted to replicate the success.
Yeah.
So it's almost, you could almost look at this as like she wanted to do something as good as The Witness for the Prosecution. Because many people, both of us included, I think that is her best play.
Yes.
So why wouldn't you want to replicate that?
So back to books.
Mm-hmm.
The Clocks is a Poirot novel about espionage and an unidentified body from 1963.
The Clocks, we don't have another one, but what The Clock Stops is obviously the sort of early version of this idea. So this was a competition.
We couldn't find any alternate titles for The Clocks, but The Clock Stops. I guess we don't know if that actually came from her, though, do we? Or might the magazine have given that title?
I mean, that's not impossible. So this is a magazine that she did a competition for, where she set up a mystery, which is very similar to The Clocks. This a couple of decades earlier, nearly.
Late 40s? Mid to late 40s?
For, I think it's called the Yorkshire magazine or something. It might have been for minors with an E, I don't know. But there was something, anyway. So she wrote it and she set up this premise, and basically competition winners had to solve it. And clearly it stuck in her brain, because years later she decided to solve it herself.
Yes. And then the opening of The Clocks is not quoted by any means, but it's you can tell it's the same sort of idea.
Yeah.
I mean, The Clock Stops, although not an honest to goodness alternate title, I do think it's quite dramatic. I wouldn't have minded it as a title for the book.
I think I might prefer that to The Clocks, actually.
I remember I love The Clocks. I think it's so slept on. But when I was first getting into Christie and just saw it on the shelf, on my mum's shelf, that would never have appealed to me to take it down over something like The Body in the Library. No. I would never have picked The Clocks.
I think The Clock Stops because it's sort of literal, that idea that the clock stops and its own dies.
I mean, I guess, although the clocks haven't stopped, have they? But it works metaphorically in that it's like your time is up, which is the dead man. So that it does still work. A moment frozen in time. It's almost towards zero-y, that kind of the moment frozen in time when everything changes, and now we embark on the case to work out what
you have
what it was.
Awoken a memory in me, actually, of I remember. Because we used to have, obviously, Mum's Agatha Christie books, but they were like up in our loft, so you had to go up and get them down. And so I used to just go and browse them all, having no idea of context or what any was. And I do remember skipping over The Clocks, because it just didn't sound very interesting, and that title doesn't help. And I often was. That's why I read Why Didn't They Ask Evans really early on. Yeah. Because I didn't know, who these characters were. Why would I? Yeah. But that is a great and intriguing title. It's a great hook. And a premise.
It is the hook. Yeah. I mean, dare I say, and relevant for this year in particular, but The Seven Dials Mystery is a more intriguing title for a clock-related premise, which is obviously what she did many years earlier. And that's just been adapted, although under a truncated title. Actually, they mirror cracked The Seven Dials Mystery, didn't they? By making it just Seven Dials. So next up, Caribbean Mystery.
A Caribbean Mystery is a Miss Marple novel about a murder on the fictional island of Saint Honoré from 1964.
Yes, which I've got notes on, because I made specific notes.
Very good, hit me.
So on my notes it says, on front cover of typescript, crossed out by AC with ACM written above it instead. So in other words, Agatha has crossed out the working title, which was Shadows and Sunlight. So that was her first title, but she has crossed it out, so it isn't someone else's influence, and written a Caribbean Mystery above it instead. And then the first page of the typescript proper, so after the cover page, it says Shadows and Sunlight, a Caribbean Mystery. So it got upgraded from just being the subtitle of a Caribbean Mystery to that being the main title.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But see, I mean, a subtitle for Christie would be very unusual, wouldn't it? Apart from Curtain is the only one I can think of, which is not on the typescript.
Yeah, it's not on the typescript. It might be that, because this is from her dictation, that she just said both titles, and then the person
typist
typing it
has
up
assumed a colon between. Yeah. I mean, Shadows in Sunlight is a beautiful title, but it strikes me as, I was talking to my friend who publishes non-fiction the other day about how he had this beautiful, beautiful book title, but it didn't tell you what the book was, and he was like, just call it, baked beans, just call it what it says on the tin, because that's what will sell, and also that's what it is. Like, sometimes you can sort of try and reinvent the wheel, or there's something that I've been delving into a little bit for something in the future about the palm tree imagery in Caribbean mystery, which often makes its way to various covers and serializations. It makes sense as a kind of Caribbean symbol and byword, and the kind of historical relevance of that, given that we've just had the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. I'm going to keep my powder dry on that a little bit, but what do palm trees cast? Well, they cast shadows in sunlight, so maybe there's something in that.
I love Shadows in Sunlight. I think it's a little bit, and this is not condescending to Agatha, I hope, but it's a little bit literary. It is, as you say, a little bit too vague.
Well, it's just not the book. It's not the genre that she's trying to sell.
No. Yeah, I like a Caribbean mystery, and I think it works as a potential purchaser as well. In the Caribbean. I think it was one of the early ones that I read, because it's exciting to see Miss Marple in the Caribbean.
Yeah, and like I said about baked beans, slightly confusingly, but I did have a point, I'm sure. But it's going, this book is an Agatha Christie but set in the Caribbean. Tells you straight up what you want to know, and like you say, that's very intriguing in and of itself. Also, there is, many Christie titles are named after the location at which the murder or the mystery takes place, right? Indeed, the next one does the exact same thing. So at Bertram's Hotel.
At Bertram's Hotel is a Miss Marple novel set in a London hotel, which is not quite what it seems, from 1965.
Which was also variously referred to as Bertram's Hotel, which again doesn't have the eloquence that
not
at
all.
Bertram's Hotel
and
has.
again, the at locates it in this specific moment.
Yeah.
This is what's happening at Bertram's Hotel right now.
Again, it feels, I don't know if I've just got Enid Blyton on the brain, but it feels a bit Enid Blyton-y to me. Like that sort of at Mallory Towers, at St Clair's. It's got that classic 20th century, maybe, read by adolescents. I don't know, it has that feeling. Yeah. Bertram is interesting as a choice of name as well. For its literary precedents, I think I spoke in Revivalism about Bertram's in Jane Austen and Bertram's in Shakespeare. It feels like a classic establishment, dare I say, name for Christie to anchor this seemingly classic, seemingly establishment setting to. That kind of ties the imagery together, doesn't it?
Yes, and you've also pointed out in terms of little tweaks that on our little spreadsheet we're working down, that Third Girl.
Third Girl is a Poirot novel set in swinging London about a young woman who thinks she may have committed a murder, from 1966.
Only as ever Third Girl, unless you're in continental Europe, because their version of the paperback was initially called The Third Girl.
But Third Girl has that development murder thing that I'm getting at, which is that for a very swinging, fashionable book, it has a directness. It feels like Bond Girl. It feels like swinging Bieber, Chelsea set. Third Girl. Third Girl. Punchy.
I was going through the files about Third Girl the other day at HarperCollins, and so for those of you who haven't heard the background, it's as simple as that there was a misprint on the cover of the paperback in the European edition, but it was in English, of the paperback of Third Girl. They called it The Third Girl, and it's quite rare to find it now. My lovely boyfriend managed to find me a copy, so thank you, James. But I mentioned that they'd actually had printed it for the home market, and I think it was like 200,000 copies.
Did they pulp it?
I presume they rejacketed it, because I know that did happen with other paperbacks. I'm going to talk about Doctor Who again, but I know that Target paperbacks, they would literally rip off the covers and put new.
Really?
Cover. But yeah, I mean, that's what the paperwork says.
That's awful.
Obviously,
200,000.
That's what it said.
Heads would roll for that.
Yeah.
That's really bad. It's one of those. That's one of the things I love about working in audio publishing is that there's nothing irreversible like printing a mistake because it's all digital, so you can just update it.
Yeah,
it's all on the wide web somewhere.
But I think everyone's a bit more chilled about it back in those days because there was this whole correspondence I was reading about. This is really old, by the way, so we're talking like 40, 50 years ago, that Canada had been publishing an Agatha book forever, and they didn't have the rights. They had misunderstood a form of correspondence, and so they had been publishing it forever, basically in paperback. But I think they had the rights, but they didn't. No one seemed that bothered.
No, but I mean,
we'll fix that.
Suffice to say, they're very desirable now, aren't they? Those copies.
Yes, they are.
If you go to your shelf, and if you find you have one, then hang on for it for dear life.
That's what I don't think you'll mind me saying, but that's what happened with David of Collecting Christie. He went to Torquay Museum and found a copy on the shelf in their bookshop.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I was like, I went there that afternoon. Afternoon after he'd gone and found it. But I've now got a really lovely one, thanks to James.
Yeah. So yes, not a working title and not a title at all. We do not approve of that mistaken non-Christie title.
So if you have got a copy, get your biro out and cross it out. It doesn't matter about the value, just make it right.
Yeah. I've got really into my local library. I'm obsessed with the library now. But several books I've got at the library now, like academic-y books, have had people just like full on biro correcting
it's awful,
mistakes and stuff in them. But then I'm kind of like, I'm looking at their annotation and I'm like, well, you are right. Yeah. So the book was wrong. So it's quite helpful that they've changed it, really. But
okay, next up,
yes,
Endless Night.
Endless Night.
Endless Night is a standalone psychological thriller in which young couple Michael and Ellie are menaced by unusual happenings from 1967.
Which I guess it's no surprise that initially was called Gypsy's Acre.
Yeah,
named, of course, after the central location.
Yes, which is known as the Towers initially, and then when they
they say it's informally always been called that. Because I was looking
officially known as the Towers, but Gypsy's Acre is the name that local legend has it by.
Yeah.
And we were going to talk about, because we actually haven't really covered this before, though maybe we mentioned it in Empire, how gypsy is a contested and problematic term now.
Yeah, but we looked it up. And of course, the answer is never straightforward. The answer is that basically you should ask someone and check who you're speaking to and ask them how they like to be referred to. Because in Britain, there are lots of people who are in the travelling community or indeed just outside of it or slightly separate to it, who happily refer to themselves as gypsies. But for other people, it is an offensive term. So basically, you should take your cue from what people want to be called, which I think is a good way to think about everything.
It's a good
really,
yardstick for life, yeah, absolutely.
So we use the website, by the way, gypsy-traveller.org, which is a charity that advocates for equality, but also has some really useful resources on there. So yes, thank you to them.
That's really useful. I think obviously, whatever we may think about the use of the word now, I'm glad that it didn't end up in the title, given that it is offensive to some people. And I think when you were saying then about it depending on, basically, it sounded like reclaiming it in the same way that I like to reclaim the F word as a means of taking the fangs out of it that successive generations of discrimination and hideousness have given it. But like you say, that is a personal choice. And obviously, Christie wasn't from the travelling community. It is worth saying that title never made it particularly far as an option.
No.
And indeed, Christie isn't necessarily condoning the suspicion of traveller communities in the novel, because it turns out, of course, that they are not to blame for anything that's happened, and that's all a smokescreen. So as often, something that may look like Christie is actually being quite reactionary or quite traditional, if you dig into the way the narrative takes you by the end, actually she's doing something quite sort of quietly radical by using those things as obfuscation. Yeah.
By the pricking of my thumbs sees Tommy and Tuppence return to investigate a mystery at a nursing home from 1968.
So By the Pricking of My Thumbs is an interesting one. I feel like you've got a lot for this.
Yeah, Russell. Look,
there are loads of alternate... Given that we've really only had one or two throughout, loads of alternate titles for this one.
Yeah, so this is a funny one because there is a piece of paper at the Christie Archive Trust as part of the typescript where she has listed possible titles. So shall we go through them?
Yeah.
So firstly, we've got The House by the Canal, which a few variants of appeared in the press as well. So in America, there is an advert that mentions that her next book will be The House by the Canal or something along those lines.
So that must have got quite far then if it was into press releases and things.
But I think also communication is slower. So actually, it might well be that the publisher was told that's the current title 6 months ago, and they don't have an update.
And we should say, so that's the one of the key clues that put Tommy and Tuppence onto this mystery is that suspicious old lady Mrs. Lancaster in the nursing home where Tommy's Aunt Ada is staying gifted Aunt Ada a painting of a house by a canal, which Tuppence in particular thinks is suspicious and thinks is a lead, and then she eventually tracks down the house by the canal, and it ends up being important to the plot. So that's what that refers to.
The next one is No Time Is Needed, which Agatha quotes from Rex Warmley or Warmley.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're much better at deciphering her handwriting than I am.
Well, the issue with this is that unfortunately the name she's put down is not the person who did write it.
Oh.
So this is actually from George Seferis. No time is needed for evil to raise its head and the sick, etc., etc. I can't read all of her handwriting, but this is how she went for
No time is needed is sort of the refrain in this poem, it looks like. It's clearly a poem.
Yes, it is, yes.
I like the alliteration, and it is quite intriguing, but it's not very... It's kind of like Among the Pigeons for Ordeal by Innocence. It's not very specific to the plot, not in the way that I would argue Pricking of My Thumbs, or certainly House by the Canal is.
It's like it only works if you know the rest of the poem, because it only works knowing about no time is needed for evil to come. Whereas actually, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Without that.
I mean, dare I say, the No Time is Needed could be a better alternate title than For the Clocks.
Yes.
Talking about time and clock stopping and various other things.
So next up, it's The Drumming Word, which is taken from a poem by Terence Tiller. Now, this took some investigating, because in my naivety, I thought, well, if this is a famous enough poem for Agatha to basically be able to write it off the top of her head, I imagine, because she never gets these quite right when writing them up, then surely it's online. It is not online, including at the official Terence Tiller website. But I managed to find a book. Look, an actual physical book.
Oh, wow.
Green. It's called Reading a Medal.
It's beautiful. It's sort of
and
green, skinny hardback, yellowy pages. Weathered by the years.
Weathered by the years.
Oh, sorry, no.
Weathered by just being
I was talking about Mark then.
Oh.
No, the book is Weathered by the Years.
1957, Reading a Medal and Other Poems by Terence Tiller. And finally...
See, again, a writer that was obviously fairly notable in Christie's time that's completely lost to the sands of time because you couldn't even find this online.
No. So it is a long poem, called Winter Elegy, the Shakespearean tragic heroes. So you can imagine why Agatha might be interested. And I'm just going to read the one stanza that seems to have appealed to Agatha.
Please.
We walk tonight, and icon armour shines, rags gutter in the candles of the snow, ravaged boughs and curtains beat their chains, on madness rising like a menacing bird. Oh, let me not be mad. What evil now flowers out of memory to the drumming word? Remember? And foreboding being all I know? What beast roars to this landscape that I read for the earth's answer? This is room and bed and you. So Agatha particularly liked What Evil Now flowers out of memory to the drumming word. So she was interested by What Evil Now or the drumming word as being titles. I love What Evil Now.
Yes, she's even with the question mark as well, which would have been quite striking. She hasn't done that for quite a few years.
No.
Since Evans, maybe?
No, that's true. So she's obviously playing with lots of different ideas, but in the end goes for the Macbeth, written at the bottom after everything else, almost, well, it seems to be an afterthought.
Yeah.
By the pricking of my thumbs. She puts an arrow next to it and says, possibly quite good, question mark. Yes, I think it is, Agatha.
Yeah.
I think it is.
It's interesting, John won't mind me coming for him, John Cohen, because I do that all the time. But he says in the Notebook, the fact that there are so many alternate titles for this book shows how unfocused the planning of it is. And I heartily disagree with that because I think this is a fantastic book from Christie and not unfocused at all. But it is true to say that there are a lot more in this case. He did mention Grandmother's Steps. Almost a nursery rhyme title, but more like a nursery game title. Like Grandma's Footsteps, I would know it as, or the Weeping Angel game, and Behind the Fireplace, which is also like House by the Canal. That's a crucial clue, isn't it?
Yes.
But yeah, lots of alternate titles.
Yeah, lots of really good ones too.
So penultimate, Halloween Party.
Halloween Party is a Poirot mystery novel in which a girl is drowned while apple bobbing from 1969.
There's really only one alternate title, I think, which is Easeful Death.
I don't get it.
So, Kemper didn't either.
No, and I do remember them explaining it, but I don't remember.
I know, I think... Yeah.
So what aren't we getting?
I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. Easeful doesn't mean... You think it means easily, but it doesn't. The word easeful literally means providing comfort or peace. I think Kemper says there's nothing easy about this death. It's actually a horrible death, but it's not about that. It's about almost like the cauterizing of the wound. Like there's something toxic in the community, and these deaths sort of absolve it, is how I was reading it.
I was thinking it was going to be that the murderers, by getting rid of the person who might be able to prove an earlier crime, that is... cauterizing the wound for them. That actually, that means that they can be reassured that, hey, we can't be caught now because our one witness, as far as they're concerned, is out of the way.
Oh, and this is a John Keats quote from Ode to a Nightingale. So, and we know that Keats is one of Christie's favourite poets. She is on record saying that several times.
I'm so grateful to all these people who worked out these quotes years ago because I'm so rubbish at it.
I can't say I've read New Keats, to be fair. I can spot the Shakespeare ones, and like I say, I know Lady of Shalott very well, but yeah, stuff like Keats and then finally, Frankfurt.
Passenger to Frankfurt is a standalone espionage thriller about Sir Stafford Nye's hunt for answers from 1970.
Yeah, which didn't have too much in the way of different things. I was looking at it again the other day, and I did notice Passenger from Frankfurt was on the original typescript, again, that she dictated, which she's then crossed out and changed to. But actually it does work either way, because they're in transit. And actually...
Well, no, but they start in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
They are passenger... They are...
But then we're talking about
Passengers
where they're going
Frankfurt.
after that point, because she's taken Sir Stafford Nye's place. So she's now the passenger from Frankfurt.
Yeah, but that's where the narrative goes, isn't it? From Frankfurt.
Yeah.
But
it works either way.
But he doesn't go to Frankfurt, does he?
Well, they meet in Frankfurt.
Well, yeah, but not in the book. They already are in Frankfurt.
They already are there, yeah.
So the first journey we see is a passenger from Frankfurt.
Yeah.
So that arguably is more accurate.
Yeah.
More like aid memoir titles in the notebooks, Missing Passenger Story and Airport Story. Obviously, those were never intended to be proper, appear on spines. I quite like Passengers in Transit.
I really like that because I think that speaks to the wider themes. Like, we are all in transit from one period to another.
Exactly.
As the world is developing. Yeah, I like Passengers in Transit.
I completely agree. And also, we're not the first to say Benedict Morrison, friend of the podcast, is fond of talking about the liminal spaces of Christie. A lot of academics are fond of talking about liminal spaces, full stop. But it is true that a lot of Christies take place in that sort of limbo, and that is really what an airport represents symbolically in a book. That's certainly what Frankfurt's supposed to represent, because it's such a busy hub of travel. And like you say, it's a place of turmoil at this particular moment, this moment of student protests and old order collapsing and new world rising. So yeah, Passengers in Transit, that would have been a good one. But that was an honest to goodness working title from Christie herself.
There you go. Well, thank you for listening. Do get in touch if you've got anything to add. I think there are a couple of working titles that we skipped over, actually. So if you think we skipped one that you think would be really interesting to discuss, tell us. Or if you've got any more insight. You can obviously find us on Instagram at Christie_time. Our blue sky is ChristieTime.com, which is also our website. Do check out our website. We do put things like our events and our resources and stuff up there. You can email us at ChristieTimeProd@gmail.com. You can find Gray at grayrobertbrown.wixsite.com/grayrobertbrown. I'm on Instagram at Dr. Mark Aldridge, on Blue Sky at markaldridge.info, which is also my website. And you are always very welcome to check out my books. And do check out my website as well, I should say, because quite often I do talks that are at quite short notice. No, they, like as in we go off and record months in advance, and I might only know 6 weeks before that I'm doing something. So I always post about stuff I'm doing there, as we do on our Christie Time website as well.
We do. And of course, keep an eye out for WESTMAPOD, which is coming soon,
very soon,
on its own feed. And you can keep up with updates about that on the socials that Mark's already given you. So yeah, until next time.
Keep swinging.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening, dear swingers. I very much consider myself the finished article, actually, and not a work in progress. If you disagree, write in.
I'm going backwards.
The Swinging Christies is a Christie Time project by Dr. Mark Aldridge and Gray Robert Brown. This episode was recorded in London on the 20th of February 2026. Our artwork was designed by Bartlett Studio and Tom Double, and our music is by Dar Golan. We should say we're obsessed with Tom Double.
Oh,
and
he's so
his work
good.
is phenomenal, isn't it? We've got so many exciting things to show.
When he sent us through the WESTMAPOD artwork for Giant's Bread.
Yeah.
Teaser there. Oh, I gasped.
Yeah.
Literally.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom.